Most people think Amazon makes money by selling things online. In 2025, Amazon's online store generated $717 billion in revenue. Its operating margin on that revenue, roughly 4%. Meanwhile, a division most consumers have never thought about generated $128 billion at a 35% margin. AWS funds almost everything Amazon does, and it started as an accident. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in 1994 in his garage in Bellevue, Washington. He quit his job at a hedge fund, drove across the country with his wife, and started selling books online. On the surface, a bookstore. Underneath, something entirely different. Bezos chose books not because he loved books, though he did, but because there were 3 million book titles in print, and no physical store could stock more than a fraction of them. The internet could stock all of them. Books were the perfect first product to prove that e-commerce worked. From the beginning, Bezos was not building a bookstore. He was building infrastructure. His stated goal was to be Earth's most customer-centric company, not Earth's largest retailer. That distinction matters because infrastructure, not products, is where Amazon's real value would eventually emerge. But in 1999, that future was not obvious. Amazon was spending aggressively, losing money and betting on a vision that most investors thought was reckless. By the early 2000s, Amazon had a significant internal problem. Every team that wanted to build a new product or feature had to build the underlying infrastructure themselves. Need to store data? Build your own storage system. Need computing power? Build your own servers. Need a database? Build your own. The result was chaos. Every team was reinventing the same wheels. Projects were slow, costs were high, and Amazon's engineering talent was being consumed by infrastructure work rather than customer-facing products. In 2002, Bezos sent what became known as the API mandate, a memo that changed everything. The mandate? Every team must expose their data and functionality through service interfaces. Every service must be built to be externalizable, usable by the outside world. Teams that did not comply would be fired. The internal reason? Force Amazon's engineering teams to think in terms of reusable, scalable services rather than one-off solutions. The unintended consequence? Amazon had accidentally designed a product that the entire world needed. Amazon Web Services launched publicly in 2006. The initial product, S3, a simple storage service, and EC2, a virtual computing service. The pitch was simple. Instead of buying your own servers, renting data center space, and managing your own infrastructure, you could rent Amazon's. Pay only for what you use. Scale up instantly when you need more, scale down when you don't. The early customers were mostly startups. Companies like Dropbox, Airbnb, and Netflix built their entire businesses on AWS rather than building their own infrastructure. But the genius was not immediately obvious to Amazon's competitors. Microsoft, Google, and others had the same infrastructure. They had the same engineering talent. They could have launched the same service. They didn't for several years because they did not understand what Amazon had actually built. AWS was not a product. It was a platform. And platforms have network effects that products do not. Every company that built on AWS became dependent on it. Every developer who learned AWS became an advocate for it. Every startup that used AWS to grow became an enterprise customer when it scaled. By the time Microsoft Azure launched seriously in 2010 and Google Cloud in 2013, AWS had a 4 to 6 year head start and a customer base that was deeply embedded. In 2025, AWS generated $128.7 billion in revenue. Its operating margin, 35%. Operating income, $45.6 billion. That is 57% of Amazon's total operating income from 18% of its revenue. AWS is the most famous hidden business inside Amazon. But it is not the only one. Amazon's advertising revenue in 2025, $68.6 billion. Think about that. Amazon's advertising business alone would rank among the largest companies in the Fortune 500. Most people do not think of Amazon as an advertising company. But when you search for a product on Amazon, the top results are often paid placements. Brands pay Amazon billions to appear first in search results to its hundreds of millions of daily users. The competitive advantage? Amazon knows what people actually buy, not just what they click or watch. This purchase intent data makes Amazon advertising extraordinarily effective for consumer brands. Google knows what you search for. Facebook knows what you like. Amazon knows what you buy. In the competition for advertising dollars, knowing what people actually purchase is the most valuable signal of all. Looking at AWS and advertising together, a pattern emerges that explains almost everything Amazon does. Bezos famously said, "Your margin is my opportunity." What he meant: wherever a competitor is making high margins, Amazon sees an opportunity to undercut them, gain the customer, and then make money on services around that customer. The retail business is low margin, by design. 4 to 7% operating margin. Why? Because the goal of the retail business is not to make money. It is to build the customer relationship, the purchasing data, and the logistics infrastructure that makes AWS, advertising, and Prime membership more valuable. AWS cross-subsidizes retail, but retail enables AWS. Every time a startup builds on AWS, it might also sell products through Amazon's marketplace. Every enterprise that runs workloads on AWS might also advertise to Amazon's customer base. The businesses are interconnected in ways that create compounding advantages no competitor can fully replicate. In 2025, Amazon reported net income of $77.7 billion on $717 billion in revenue. For context, in 2012, 13 years earlier, Amazon's net income was negative $48 million on $61 billion in revenue. The transformation was not a pivot. It was the original plan, finally visible. Amazon's business model is worth studying not because you are building a cloud computing empire, but because the strategic principles underneath it apply at every scale. Lesson 1. Infrastructure is more valuable than products. Products get copied. Infrastructure gets embedded. Once a company's operations are built on your infrastructure, whether that is AWS, Stripe's payment rails, or Shopify's commerce platform, switching costs are enormous. The most valuable businesses in the world tend to be infrastructure businesses, not product businesses. This is worth understanding when evaluating companies to invest in or build. Lesson 2. The willingness to lose money in one area to win in another is a competitive strategy, not a failure. Amazon's retail business operates on thin margins deliberately. Those margins fund the customer relationship that makes AWS customers, Prime members, and advertising clients more valuable. The accounting loss in one segment is the strategic investment in another. This is the same logic as Costco's hot dog. The thing that looks like a loss is often the foundation of the most profitable part of the business. Lesson 3. Platform businesses compound in ways product businesses cannot. Every new AWS customer makes AWS more valuable to existing customers. More services, more integrations, more support. Every new Amazon Prime member makes Amazon's marketplace more attractive to sellers. These network effects create compounding advantages that are almost impossible to replicate from a standing start. When evaluating a business, ask, does growth make this more valuable for existing customers? If yes, you may be looking at a platform. Lesson 4. Long-time horizons are themselves a competitive advantage. Amazon operated at thin margins or losses for over 15 years before its true profitability became apparent. Most competitors and investors could not see the model because they were evaluating it on quarterly results, not on the structural position being built. Bezos famously focused on what would not change in 10 years: customer desire for low prices, fast delivery, and wide selection, rather than what might change. Anchoring strategy to durable customer needs rather than current market conditions is one of the most underrated competitive advantages in business. In November 2025, OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, signed a $38 billion 7-year contract with AWS. The company that is building the most sophisticated artificial intelligence in history chose to run it on infrastructure built by a company that started as a bookstore in a garage. Amazon did not build AWS to become a cloud computing company. It built AWS to solve an internal problem, and discovered that the solution to its own problem was exactly what the entire world needed. The lesson is not that you should accidentally build the world's largest cloud computing platform. The lesson is that the infrastructure you build to solve your own problems is often more valuable than the products you set out to sell. Subscribe to Founders and Fortunes. Every week we break down the business models behind the world's most valuable companies and find the financial logic hiding inside. Next week, how Spotify convinced the music industry to give it their entire catalog, and why that deal is one of the most complex financial arrangements in entertainment history. I'll see you there.